I'll never forget the time where I almost lost my life in 2022. It was in the month of September and I lived in Onalaska, Wisconsin. I was also a sophomore in high school. I met this 17-year-old man named Austin at my summer job. He used to go to the same high school as me, but he got expelled for plagiarism. He would pick me up and drop me off at home every day of the summer when we had work because I didn't have a driver's license at the time. I also want to point out that it was pretty obvious that he had a crush on me because he would hug me every day. But I made it look like that he didn't know that I knew that he liked me, and it worked. I didn't feel the same way like he did. We were now into like the second or third week of school, and I was still settling in because I still had summer blues. It was the end of the night, and me and Austin were driving home from a party that a kid from school threw. Austin now just pulled up at my house to drop me off. Before I could step out of the vehicle, Austin hesitantly asked me if I wanted to go out with him. I laughed and told him that I was okay and I just wanted to be friends. He then said all right with a frown on his face. We then waved and said bye to each other. I then went inside my house, took off my shoes, changed into my pajamas, brushed my teeth, and was ready to go to bed. Before I could even go to bed, I got a text from friend. I unlocked my phone and what I read on my screen will forever haunt me in my dreams. It was a long paragraph about how Austin had been secretly taking photos of me while I was sleeping in my bed through my window. I would sometimes leave the shades to my window open because no moonlight or streetlights ever came through the window. I also saw the photos of me sleeping. The reason how my friend found out is because Austin bragged to her about this through text. He also had a photo album of it that was labeled "The Love of My Life." Right there and then, I felt like a needle was going through my heart. Realizing his obsession with me, I sent him a text in all caps telling him to never contact me again. He then said he was sorry playing the victim card. I felt like screaming after reading his text. I sent him another text saying to him that he needed to lose my number, and next, I blocked him. I wasn't feeling tired now, so I went to go take some melatonin and Benadryl so I could fall asleep quicker, and it worked, but not for long. I don't know what time it was, but I woke up to the sound of my window shattering. I couldn't react quickly, and right in front of me, there he was. Austin. Before I could see what was in his hand, I felt my face being stabbed with a knife. I started to cry and scream, and about 5 seconds later, I heard my dad scream out in the hallway, "What the hell is going on?" That's when Austin managed to escape through the broken window. Next, my father came storming in my room, and he had a look of terror on his face. He was feeling a mixture of sadness and anger, and he started hugging me, asking if I was all right and what had just happened. I was honest with him and told him that I wasn't fine nor safe, and that boy Austin broke through my window and started attacking me with a knife. Now my father's emotion turned to 100% anger, and he ran out of the house chasing down Austin, but he was unable to find him. I called the police, told them my story, and they said they'll be there ASAP. They arrived 10 minutes later along with medics. I was now feeling very dizzy with blood all over my face. My father gave me some water and a towel to wrap around my body. I was able to tell them my side of the story, and I was then taken to the hospital in the ambulance while the police would try to locate where Austin was. I was treated for my stab wounds, and I stayed overnight at the hospital and was able to go home the next day. It took the cops a little while to find him, but they eventually found him. I was given information that when Austin was at the hospital, he stated that he was going to prison for a long time, admitted that he didn't know why he did it, and expressed that he loved me. As a result, Austin was charged with felony counts with attempted 1 Saint-degree intentional homicide, armed burglary, and was subsequently given a cash bond at $50,000. A year later, he was guilty from the first charge, but the second charge was dismissed, but read in. Ultimately, Austin was sentenced to 16 years in Wisconsin State Prison and 4 years of extended supervision. Although justice has been served, I still get very skittish whenever I meet another man, because I'm afraid of what his real intentions are. I know I sound crazy, but I still have a lot of PTSD from it. I wish nothing but pity on Austin, and I hope he goes to hell when he dies. This story takes place all the way back to October of 2016, when I was a freshman in high school. During my freshman year, I met this boy named Elijah, and we eventually ended up dating. We were both new to the school. We first met each other at orientation, but we didn't have any classes together. It was now October, and it has been a month since we started dating, and the relationship was going pretty well. I thought he was a good person, but he later on showed his true colors. One day when I was in class, I had to use the bathroom. I raised my hand, and I asked the teacher to go and excuse myself, and she said it was okay. As I was on my way to the bathroom, I saw Elijah in the hallway. We both smiled at each other and gave a small smooch to one another. I asked him what he was doing out in the hallway and why he wasn't in class. He told me that he was disrupting the class and that he had to take a break. I rolled my eyes while laughing after he said this. I then said to him, "I'm going to use the bathroom now. I'll see you later." He said back, "Yeah, I'll text you." I then entered the bathroom, which was right next to his class. I went into a stall and I was doing my business. I was in the stall for like a minute and a half when I suddenly heard the door to the bathroom open. At first I figured that it was someone who was the same gender as me that had to use the bathroom as well, but I spoke too soon. I then heard this person open the stall door right next to the stall that I was in. As I was still doing my, you know what? I didn't even look down. I just looked straight ahead in front of me. As I was doing this, I felt a hand touch my private part area. I looked down to the right of me to only see the haunting sight of Elijah giving a sinister smile, and he was the one who was touching me. I screamed bloody murder, and I pulled up my panties and skirt right away while I was running out of the bathroom, completely forgetting to wash my hands. Elijah didn't even follow me. He just stayed where he was. I was sprinting like Usain Bolt all the way to the principal's office. I then got to the principal's office. Right away, as the headmaster saw me, he looked really concerned, as if he knew something was wrong because I was bursting out crying. He asked me what was wrong. I told him everything from when I was going to the bathroom and when I bumped into Elijah outside in the hallway because he got kicked out of class, to the moment he intruded into the women's restroom and violated my personal area. I could tell by the look on his face that he knew I wasn't lying. He told me that I can go home for the rest of the day because he clearly saw that I wasn't in the right mindset, and he also said that he will speak to Elijah. The next morning, I was called into the principal's office while I was in the middle of my first class. I then arrived there and sat down. The headmaster then spoke and said that Elijah has been expelled from this school. He also told me that this wasn't the first time that he had been expelled. I found out that he had previously gotten kicked out from his last school for sexually harassing many women. I felt queasy, and I was flabbergasted just hearing about this. Not too long after we wrapped up our meeting and I went back to class. I was able to complete my high school life without any other issues. People like Elijah never change. If any other woman ends up dating Elijah, I would feel very sorry for you. Last year, I was a freshman at University of Hartford, which is of course in Connecticut. I decided that I would go as an undecided major for my first year because I still didn't know who I wanted to be at that time. I am a very social guy, and I was interested in joining Greek life. I applied to Rush, one of the school's fraternities, which I will leave out the name. First week was pretty simple. I had to get to know everyone who belonged in the fraternity and did a bunch of activities. The second week got more intense. This is where the hazing got started. First ritual I did was chugging 4 cans of beer in under 2 minutes. I puked so much after finishing this and was so drunk. It was so embarrassing that the police were almost called on me because I was apparently bothering other people. The second ritual was something nobody on this earth should ever have to go through. One night after finishing classes, I went straight to the frat house. It was the last day of rushing and I was hoping I would get into this frat. I arrived at the house and I already saw a bunch of members supposedly waiting there for me. The leader then said to me, "Follow us," and I obeyed without any questions asked. We were walking somewhere. I didn't know where we were going. The further I went, the more I realized that we were most likely going into the woods, and I was right. We stopped right at the beginning of the woods. I had no clue what they wanted me to do next. My first thought was that I was going to streak around the entire campus. I wasn't afraid to do so. People would be cheering after all. Sadly, I turned out to be incorrect. I remember next that the leader gave me a blindfold mask and 2 other people tied it around my head. I then felt myself being put down on a mat. I didn't know what they were doing since I couldn't see anything. Next thing I felt was my legs and arms being tied with ropes to presumably around trees. What was going on? Then I heard someone count the numbers 5 down to 1, and after the number 1, I felt boiling hot water being thrown onto my body. I screamed like a madman. My screams were so loud that people from miles away could have probably heard me. They weren't done. This did this 2 more times, and each time it felt hotter. It felt like I was being thrown into lava. I then felt myself being untied and picked back up on my feet, and the blindfold was taken off of me. I saw every current member of that frat huddled up around me, all looking at me. I was so scared at this moment. I thought of running, but there was no way I could outrun any of them since it was like 1 against 20. The leader of the frat then walked up to me. He stopped for a brief second, then he reached his hand out to shake my hand and said, "Congratulations, you're in." He said this while grinning at me. He then said that you'll see all of us in 2 days to make it official, and then they all walked away. Right at this moment, I've had it. I had no intention of joining their frat after what they had just done to me. Thankfully, I still had my phone on me, and I called 911 and told them everything. They told me to wait right there as a car would pick me up, take me to the station, and I will tell my story there. After finishing up, I was then transferred to a hospital to get treated for my first-degree burns. After that, I called my mom and told her everything. She sounded so distraught over the phone, and she promised that she'll pick me up. After getting home, I had a long talk with my mother, and I told her that I wanted to drop out this year and resume my studies the following year. She couldn't agree more. We then reported my story to the school, and believe or not, that fraternity I rushed was suspended not too long after. This past August, I started at another college, and this time, I was no longer interested in joining any other Greek life. My advice to everyone watching is that you should not join any Greek life. You have to go through some embarrassing step-by-step activities to join one, and you have to pay all of them to be your so-called friends. It's pretty ironic to call it a brotherhood when it's nowhere near a brotherhood, more like the enemy. When I have kids in the future, I will not allow them to join any Greek life after what I have gone through. My story takes place in Johannesburg, South Africa, where I was born. My family is British but had moved there for work. I lived there until I was 14 before moving to the UK. I'm 36 now, so it's been quite a few years, but I still remember the events of this particular day as though it were yesterday. The day started like any other. I went to primary school, came home, did my homework, played in the park next door for a while, and ate dinner. A typical day. At the time, my family was struggling financially, so we were living with my grandparents. Despite this, for my birthday, I received a space case. I don't know if anyone else remembers these, but in case you don't, it was essentially a hard plastic-colored pencil case, about 32 centimeters wide and 3 centimeters deep, used to hold all of your stationery for school. It sounds random, but everyone in my class had one, and I had been asking for one for months, so it became my prized possession. I mention this for a reason that will become clear later. As bedtime approached, I kissed my mom goodnight and headed to my bedroom. My school backpack was placed neatly in the living room, and as I walked past it, I felt a strange urge to take the space case out. I don't know why I did it. I had never done so before, but something in my mind compelled me to remove it. I did, then walked into my bedroom, closed the door, and went to bed, placing the pencil box on my dresser. I slept until the middle of the night and woke up at 1 a.m., feeling terrified. I had no idea why I felt that way. The house was silent, and there didn't seem to be anyone in my room. However, this fear was paralyzing, keeping me frozen in bed, unable to move for fear of making even the slightest noise. I tried to calm myself, reasoning that it was probably just a bad dream and that there was no reason to be afraid, but it didn't work. I don't know how long I lay there, eyes focused on my closed bedroom door, ears straining for any sound from outside the room. It felt like hours. Eventually, I mustered enough courage to get out of bed, sneak over to the door, and quietly turn the key to lock it. I wasn't supposed to lock my door. My mom had warned me against it, but I felt certain she would understand if I explained how scared I was. After locking the door as quietly as possible, I crept back to my bed and had just slid under the covers when, to my horror, the handle of the door creaked as someone tried to open it from the other side. There was a pause. I held my breath and covered my mouth with my hands to stop myself from screaming. My heartbeat was so loud in my ears that I feared whoever was there might hear it. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the handle was released, and the silence returned. My mind raced. Who could it have been? Was it one of my siblings or my mother? No. I could hear my mother's soft snores from the next room. If it were one of my siblings, they would have spoken. So who was it? An intruder? But why hadn't the dogs barked? We had 2 large German shepherds who barked at just about everything. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered the silence, and the dogs finally started barking. Chaos erupted. I heard my grandfather's booming voice shouting angrily, then the rapid footsteps of what sounded like multiple people fleeing. My mother and grandmother, woken by the noise, rushed into the hallway outside my door, their voices panicked. "Do we have a baseball bat or something to protect ourselves?" my grandmother yelled. "John chased them outside. He'll get himself killed. They might have weapons." Summoning my courage, I unlocked and opened the door, and my mother's panicked face met mine. She pushed me back into the bedroom and told me that someone had broken into the house and that I should stay put until it was safe. Too frightened to return to the room alone, I stayed in the hallway, trembling. Outside, there were more shouts, and a few minutes later my grandfather re-entered the house frustrated. "They got away," he yelled angrily, "but one of them fell into the pool. I tried to drown the bastard, stepped on his head, but he got out and jumped over the wall." I should note that he was only trying to protect his family and didn't actually intend to drown anyone. He was just trying to stop the intruder from escaping. To this day, I believe he was the bravest person I have ever known. After calming down, he assured us it was safe and we all followed him into the living room. The place was a mess. The first thing I noticed was that the TV, a large boxy thing from the 90s, was on the floor, smashed to pieces. This had been the source of the loud crash. The radio was missing, along with various other items. Books, my mother's handbag, even food from the kitchen were gone. I followed the trail of the mess to the back garden and realized that our barbecue and some of my toys had also been taken. The thieves had escaped by jumping over the wall into the park. At dawn, when it was light enough, some of the stolen items were found abandoned in the park, likely dropped in their hurry to escape. Back inside, I realized that my school backpack was missing. After a frantic search, I accepted that it must have been stolen as well. I remember dreading the thought of telling my teacher that my homework had been stolen and wondering if she would even believe me. My mom hugged me and apologized for the loss of my space case, which I had been so thrilled to receive. Only then did I remember that I had taken it out of my backpack before bed. I still don't know why I did that or why I woke up feeling terrified that night. What I do know is that even now, I have a lingering fear of someone breaking in, and it often makes it difficult for me to sleep at night. I'm currently a 22-year-old student going into my final year of college. Throughout my time in college, I never really had any friends. For some reason, I had a very hard time making connections. That's why, almost every day, I would go on Ohm.tv to chat with strangers since Omegle had shut down. Whenever I went on, it was always the same cycle. There would be normal people, obnoxious people, and unfortunately, quite a few really inappropriate men. However, the last interaction I had on Ohm.tv was enough to make me quit using it for good. 1 week ago, I logged into Ohm.tv and pressed the start button. First 30 or 40 people simply skipped me. I wasn't offended. This was typical for every session I had on there. Finally, I connected with a person, or rather people, that would make me question if I ever wanted to engage with anyone on an online platform again. The screen showed 2 boys, an older brother and a younger brother. What I saw next was more than shocking. It was deeply disturbing. The older brother held the younger brother at knife point. The younger boy started talking and said, "Hi." The older brother yelled at me through the screen, shouting, "Don't leave." I desperately wanted to leave, but my concern for the younger brother's safety stopped me. I feared that leaving would lead to a deadly outcome for him. I tried to stay calm and replied with a soft, "Hi," back to the little boy. He didn't give his name, but instead mentioned his birthday. I nodded gently, trying to keep the situation from escalating further. The next part of the interaction is something that will haunt me for the rest of my life. The older brother shouted, "Okay, now go!" I was confused and had no idea what was about to happen. Suddenly, I felt my heart drop as I watched the younger brother pull down his pants and expose himself while the older brother continued to hold a knife to him. I was terrified and quickly tried to exit the call, moving my mouse as fast as I could to click the exit button. But to my horror, the mouse was frozen. I was stuck, unable to end the call. I have a desktop computer, so closing a lid wasn't an option. I tried holding the power button down to turn it off, but it wouldn't budge either. The computer plug was in a spot where the desk was pressed against the wall, and I couldn't reach it without moving the desk, a task I wasn't strong enough to do. Stuck with no other options, I was forced to remain on the call, feeling helpless and filled with fear. The younger boy continued to expose himself and then suddenly screamed, "Suck my dick!" At that moment, the video call finally ended and my computer finally turned off. I could have clicked the report button, but I doubted it would have made any real difference. Ohm.tv wasn't known for its strict enforcement of rules. I didn't tell anyone I regularly talked to about what happened because I felt too embarrassed to say it out loud. The more I thought about this nightmarish incident, the more a disturbing thought crossed my mind. What if the two brothers were trying to frame me as a pedophile? When the younger boy exposed himself, the older brother could have taken a screenshot of the call and then used it as evidence, claiming, "This adult threatened my little brother to do this, and if he didn't, bad things would happen." I tend to overthink things, but this scenario seemed frighteningly possible. I can only hope that as the younger brother grows older, he realizes what his older brother is truly capable of and chooses a different path for himself.